start. Yeah, okay. Okay, we have started recording and live. Let's start. Yeah, we can start now, please.
Right. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, whatever, for everybody. We are in this second section of this event, this webinar that we decided to organize to recognize the 100th centenary of the birthday of Chris Freeman, who was so important for all of us in terms of his contribution, but also his way of living, his interaction with particularly with the young people. So in this context that we are in this centenary of his birthday, we decided in innovation and in the Journal of Innovation and Development, and also with the Globelics network, we decided to organize a special issue in the Journal of Innovation and Development to recognize the work of Chris, but particularly focuses on young people, young researchers in the early stage of their career. So we invited a set of early career or PhD student at the end of their studies of PhD. We invited them to contribute with an essay or a comment, focuses on how Chris Freeman's contributions have impacted their work. So we invited a lot of young early career and PhD students from the Global South, particularly from the Global South. And then for that, we used our networks, LALIX, AsiaLix, AfricaLix, etc., to provide names. So we invited them. We reviewed their submissions, and at the end we got 14 that were selected through a peer review processes, and then with Judith Sutz, who was the other. The editors were Judith Sutz and me, and so together we organized this, which is going to be published as a special section of one number of innovation and development. By now, the papers in the form of essays and comments are now in the journal online. Yes, so it was a decision of the Innovation and Development Journal, Globelics, and also this group of young researchers also that are working in this CRIS IS organization. We decided to organize these 3 webinars to have to combine a presentation of this early career who are publishing their contribution in this special session of innovation and development, but we decided to also to invite some seniors who particularly who were close to Chris, and then combine these sessions like a combination between the academic focus, but also these personal experiences with Chris, which have been so important for many of us, and it is nice to share with young people and with other researchers that are interested and are now connected with us. And then so this is the introduction. Susan, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I feel honored to be moderating today's discussion, which we expect to be quite lively and interactive. For those who don't know me, I'm Susan Cozzens. I'm Professor Emerita from the Georgia Institute of Technology, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. But one lovely thing about being emeritus is you can work from wherever you are. So I'm actually sitting in the Seattle, Washington area. And let me just mention briefly our 4 junior contributors today: Betty-Ann Ananeh-Frempong from the University of Cape Town in South Africa, José Miguel Natera from the Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana de México, Shagufta Haneef from the Business School in Aalborg, Denmark, and Arthur Moreira from SPRU in Sussex. I'm not going to unpack SPRU as an acronym because I think you're going to be hearing that quite a bit today. They have all written very interesting contributions for the special issue of innovation and development that Gabriela just mentioned, and we will call on them in that order. And I want everybody to just celebrate. Oh, and our two senior contributors, apologies, are Helena Lastres from Brazil, from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and Bengt-Ake Lundvall, also from the Business School in Aalborg, and also emeritus. They are each going to have 7 minutes, and it's my difficult job to actually remind them when their 7 minutes are almost up. So I hope you will all have sympathy for me, and that the presenters will make sure that you've got your really key points out early so that you don't get cut off with that in the end. And I want to celebrate just how widely scattered we are. We're being hosted out of India. We have people in Europe, in Latin America, in Denmark, and a couple of us in North America, and audience I'm sure you're in from lots and lots of places too. I see some North African colleagues out there. Let's just celebrate our global community brought together in this unusual time, but this is the blessing side of the Zoom world. So with that, Gabriela, I'm going to turn it back to you to ask our contributors the first question. You ready? Okay.
You are going to ask the.
All right. Would you like me to do that? I can certainly do that. So Betty Ann, José, Miguel, Shagufta, and Arthur, what concepts, ideas, or recommendations from Chris Freeman have affected your research? Betty Ann?
Hello, my name is Betty Ann. Thank you for this opportunity. So with the ideas from Chris Freeman's work, mainly I looked at his idea on how policy must be continuously and consciously reformed in order to keep up with the times, in order to make new technologies more efficient and productive, and also to forestall the negative influences of new technologies on the environment and the economy and the people in the economy. And so from that angle, I looked at I did a case study on the gold mining industry in Ghana. And so my research was mainly to look at the mining and regulation policy and how it has improved the gold mining industry as far as local participation is concerned. Because usually what happens is that the mining industry in developing economies tend to be more of an enclave. And so there's very little contribution from the local economy or contribution to the local economy. Most of it goes into revenue, into the government coffers, but very little goes to the environment or the people in the environment that are affected. But then when I looked at the case of Ghana's gold mining, I realized that since independence, there had been reforms, there had been changes to the mining and regulations to make them more effective in the local economy. And since 2012, laws had been enacted to move away from the enclave part of the industry to a more integrated part of the industry. And so far it had been very, very effective. There's an increased Ghanaian participation. There has also been increase in productivity. And so actually, I think for the first time in 2019 or at the end of 2018, Ghana became the highest gold mining, produced the highest output in Africa. And 40% of that output came from small-scale miners, which is only for Ghanaians. Only Ghanaians can participate in the small-scale mining. Also, when it comes to the supply firms, which is where I actually concentrated my research, most of them had admitted that their businesses had increased, the involvement in the industry had actually been deepened by these new policies. And so there had been a lot of positive things, and a lot of researchers into the field had agreed that Ghana's mining industry had moved, especially the gold mining part, had moved away from the enclave industry or economy into one that is more integrated into the Ghanaian economy. But then the other idea, because my research is in innovation, was that there wasn't much innovation. The observation I observed, and also other researchers had observed, that there's not much manufacturing or innovation in the supply firms, which were the part of the mining company that had actually been concentrated on by the mining and regulations, laws and policies that had been enacted since 2014. And what the firms that I interviewed told me was that actually they got subsidies, or they didn't have to pay import duties on goods that they imported. But if they manufactured the goods themselves, they had to pay value-added taxes and other things like that. And so they found it more profitable to import the goods that they supply to the mining companies. And so in line with the idea of Freeman that we should modify policies to make productivity more sustainable, and also to help the economy, and also to forestall the negative impacts of technology and development and industrialization. My suggestion in general was that the revenue and policy should be move towards encouraging the firms that supply to the mining companies to perform some kind of value addition, or even assembling plants, to invest in assembling plants. And so most of the firms agreed that they did have the technology to do that, because they were already doing repair works and other things when they do supply the machinery. And so it would not be a far stretch to move to an assembly plant, but then they needed to be encouraged because it would cost them financially. And so in general, that was how Freeman's ideas helped me look at the mining policy in Ghana as far as the gold mining industry is concerned. That's about it.
Thank you so much for that. It's wonderful to have that the different parts of the world brought into our lens to see what's happening there, and to understand that productivity is not just a statistic, that it's something that people have to achieve, and it can be achieved in different ways that have different multiplier effects and local consequences. So thank you for that wonderful story. Jose Miguel, how has Freeman influenced your work?
Okay, in so many different ways. First of all, hello to everyone. Thank you, Gabriela and Judith, for organizing this. Thank you to Jana and Rajesh, especially because I know how hard it is. And Freeman has an impact in my life in many different ways. And in fact, I was reflecting on the essay that I wrote for this special issue. And I decided to take a step back before talking about exactly what theoretically or methodologically he has impacted in my life, and share with you a story that I believe it's at least as important as the other things that we could show. I think I'm a very lucky person, because I have been in touch with many brilliant persons as well, that as a scholar I can recognize because of their intellectual capacity. However, I have a prerogative. For me, in order to admire a person, I need to feel that that person is good-hearted, that that person actually has some values that I could relate to. And my very first Globelics conference took place in 2010 in Malaysia. It was just a few months ago after Chris Freeman passing away. And it was my very first international conference and in the academic world. And I got so impressed, positively impressed, because I could see all the friends sharing their grief, their sorrow, also their love for a person that was part actually of their personal lives. And I regarded this as a beautiful experience of solidarity in a new field, in a new community in which I was just starting to participate. And for me, it was quite important. It made me have this motivation to participate in the Globelics community. And I remember that the Globelics Academy was taking place just a few months after. And I was so eager to get in, and hopefully I did. And then I started to promote in that exactly Globelics Academy a group with other Latin American friends to promote LALIX and support the activities that the LALIX were doing back then. And then it's history. I mean, I've been working with LALIX for so many years, and I'm so happy to do that. And in fact, some people believe that the LALIX is kind of my religion. And it is not my religion, but it is the community of solidarity, which I do believe. And we put a lot of energy and good work on it. So I think that, I mean, having the opportunity to admire a person through the persons that actually know him, it's a beautiful experience that someone like Freeman could actually do. And it was quite important for me because it related me to this person in a different way. I mean, the systemic view that he and of course Lundvall, Professor Nelson, has promoted. For me, it was beautiful. It was something that actually I have been let's say very close in many parts of my life. And then when I saw that this could actually be used as a tool for development and use knowledge in order to organize the whole thing, I fell totally in love. And started reading Freeman's, Lundvall's, Nelson's, and you know, these people that found this new film. Particularly with Freeman, I had this connection because of multidimensionality. I always thought that these reductionist approaches were a bit too problematic. You know, I'm coming from Latin America and Venezuelan, so I could see how the different conditions, the different spheres in life could actually have an impact on not only productivity, but on social development. And this idea that he proposed, for instance, in his paper of 1995, of the different perspective for national innovation systems, you know, the historical, the economical, the scientific and technological, and so on. It shocked me. It shocked me, you know, and it made me. It almost turned me into a paranoid person, trying to include as many things as I could, because I knew that these different dimensions were so important. And the other thing that actually was quite important was his consideration of history. I mean, for his in his view, history took a very important place in many of the developments that now we have, and we can see in terms of national innovation systems and in social and economic development in general. And trying to include this also into the analysis was quite a challenge. It was quite a challenge because I know that the comprehensive studies that tried to collect all the data from the past and relate it in a critical way was not easy. And particularly because in this exchange that we couldn't have, and that's the only thing that I would regret. I didn't have my chance to talk to Chris Freeman, not once, but I would have loved to, because in this opportunity, I could have the chance to discuss with him something that I think it's kind of a
1 minute.
Sorry. Yes, I'm just closing. Yes, a different perspective, because he didn't like econometrics or numbers so much, and I'm a number man. Right, so I'm an engineer myself, so I try to measure and to see and to find patterns, and you know, but at the same time, this challenge that he was posing against these quantitative approaches was an inspiration for me as well, because in my mind it was like, okay, if I'm gonna do this quantitative thing, and I know that it has been challenged, then I have to do it as good as I can. So it has fostered me to find methodological new path in order to assess evolution of the economic development and national innovation systems over the time. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's and thank you for celebrating both Chris's good heart and the multidimensionality, the interdisciplinary approach that is so wonderful to those of us who are not economists in working with people in the economics of innovation. It's not just numbers, there's hearts and there's history and there's all those other things there too. Thank you for all of that. Shagufta, could you share some of your thoughts on how Chris Freeman's ideas and work have influenced yours?
Thank you so much, Susan. I hope you can hear me. Just confirm. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I am Shagufta, and I, on behalf of my co-author and good friend, Melina Galdos, we wrote this essay together for Innovation and Development. I would like to begin by thanking the editors, Judith and Gabriela, for this special issue of Innovation and Development, and for really opening up the opportunity for young scholars like us to contribute their ideas and the opportunity to publish in a journal at this stage while we are still PhD students. So, and also to Jana for organizing and really well coordinating this seminar. And we would also like to thank Bengt-Ake, Lundvall, and Birgit Gregersen and Carlota Perez, because they provided us very valuable comments on the draft of our essay. And also thanks to Betty Ann and José for very interesting insights and remarks and your ideas in your presentation. As for me, I have been introduced, so I'm Shagufta and I'm from Pakistan. I'm a PhD student at Aalborg University Business School. And my co-author, Melina Galdos, is from Peru and a PhD fellow at SPRU at the University of Sussex. And in fact, she put the idea forth that we could write this essay together. And I couldn't be happier. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to work together with her and write together. In our essay for the special issue, we draw upon Chris's idea of voluntary underdevelopment, which is in his book, The Economics of Hope. And here I would like to share how we got interested in writing about it in the first place. And there are three main aspects that I would like to touch upon in this regard. First of all, Chris's contributions for studying development and the role of institutions and the national character of innovation have been of great interest to us. His desire to engage in developing countries analysis, keeping in view the contextual features of them instead of drawing upon general trends. It was really remarkable. And this is important in our view because national character of institutions and the development itself evolve differently in different countries. And Chris's comparative work on different countries also reflects that and makes us think about the different contexts that are present in those places. And moreover, he also argued for defining innovation systems broadly rather than narrowly in order to take into account not just the R&D and science, but social institutions and cultural dynamics that are at play. And it inspired us to look at national innovation systems beyond R&D and scientific knowledge production as inclusive systems that offer a deeper level of analysis. And our theses are also based on our respective countries, so that had an extra, layer of knowledge for us to look through. And our countries are both in Global South, Pakistan and Peru. So we could draw on the perspectives that Chris offered and gave us a rich opportunity to exchange our ideas and learn more about our own and each other's NIS while we were writing this essay, actually. Secondly, I will talk about how we were introduced to Chris's work. So we believe that not every scholar may have an encounter with Chris's work, especially those in our generation, but through others. So we have been very fortunate to be introduced to Chris's work through our senior scholars. In Melina's case, she got inspired through Judith and others in the Global South working on developmental universities. and on economic development. And I was introduced to Freeman's work on founding national innovation systems along with Bengt-Ake Lundvall and his contributions to innovation studies during my master's degree at Aalborg University. And simultaneously, while I was working with Globelics, it was a lot of his work that I got introduced to during all these assignments. And having access to this body of knowledge, and it's like standing on the shoulders of giants who introduced us to Chris's work. And it has been very impactful for our work. We also think that translating more of his work into other languages might be important because a lot of research happens outside of Global North, and it could inspire a much broader base of scholars. Thirdly, and lastly, on voluntary underdevelopment itself, that we use the concept in our essay. Chris's focus on contextual factors, especially in the developing countries, and how it relates to many universities in Global South clearly raised our interest. Our research is on universities, and it made us think about indigenous capabilities and blending them with those from abroad to advancing knowledge and the knowledge that will benefit more stakeholders in the society. Melina is looking at the role of universities for building inclusive innovation systems and focusing on how universities are richly contextualized spaces to give voices to excluded communities and create knowledge that benefits these communities. And in my case, I am studying the role of universities for gender inclusive development and how universities enact their 3 missions in order to play a developmental role in their specific context. And thereby we see the importance of interaction between different parts of the system and how it determines the rate and direction of innovation. And Chris's work has inspired us to think about the role of universities in enhancing the rate of innovation for development and also the direction, but in this case, the direction for greater social justice, which is very interesting lens for us to look at. I will stop here. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. I realize we have a challenge doing applause in the Zoom world, but people should send all the applause from their little emoticons that they want to, because all the sharing is really wonderful. One of the things that comes out as you listen across the various presenters in this series is that all of us should read The Economics of Hope again. It has meant so much to so many people. And I love your suggestion of translating some of this work into other languages. I hope there's somebody out there with the power and resources to help make that happen. So thank you very much, Shagufta. Arthur, you get the last word on this. Please go right ahead.
Thanks a lot, Susan, and thanks to Gabriela, Judith, Jana, Rajesh, organizers, both of the special issue and the seminar series. Very happy to be here. I'm talking from Belo Horizonte, Brazil, and happy to be here actually alive as well, because I happen to take part in 3 of the worst approaches to COVID around the world. I lived some time in the UK, then Sweden, and now I'm back in Brazil, so happy to be here alive. So we are asked to talk about how Freeman influenced us, and I decided to talk about the role of R&D to tackle grand challenges, because that was essential for my thesis, for the theoretical framework of it. And one thing that concerned me is that sometimes to justify the relevance of our field, economics of innovation, the linear model is criticized to such an extent that I think it dangerously harms the paramount role of R&D for society and for tackling grand challenges. And Freeman, although one of the founding fathers of the systems of innovation, he championed R&D efforts. In the 1996 article, The Greening of Technology and Models of Innovation, elements of the linear model were in fact supported, and I quote him. So elements of the vanquished and much derided linear model may yet come to the rescue of its successors. And I believe Freeman drank a lot from the influence of Bernal in this matter. and I was among the first to highlight the crucial role of R&D for development of both countries and firms. He noticed a professionalization of science for both public and private purposes. So it was the invention of a method of invention. So he started with efforts to measure R&D, and he suggested that it was too low and needed to increase, especially in backward countries, because otherwise it could mean not engaging with R&D could mean deliberate underdevelopment. But of course, Freeman saw innovation as a systemic phenomenon. But I wanted to emphasize R&D because, as he said, although demand, institutions, regulation all play a role, they tend to be related to incremental innovation, while R&D tend to be related to radical innovation. So to tackle sustainability grand challenges, allowing what we need absolute, not just a relative decoupling of materials and energy use, we will need radical innovation. He was very concerned about that aspect, that incremental innovation won't do it. This view on the relations between R&D, radical innovation, technological cycles, it all came from observation of history, the history of cyclical dominance of different technological systems, of the predominance of science push mechanisms in the early stages of radical innovation, of the fact that the government played a major role, especially in these early stages when there's low profitability and high uncertainty. So all this view allowed him an optimistic view, and also Sproul, especially in the debate with the limits to growth in the 70s with Kluber Rome, and allowed him this optimistic view on the feasibility of economic growth and also on the need of it. If radical technological changes prioritized. So with high priority to R&D, and together with, of course, strong regulations, he would say that green growth is possible. And I quote him again, only with a continuing high rate of technical change and a set of institutional changes would prevent catastrophe indefinitely. So what can we do? How can innovation policy aid this transition to a green techno-economic paradigm? Freeman seemed to agree with the proposition of the use of science and technology policy to achieve environmental goals. And that sounds quite familiar, doesn't it? It goes quite hand in hand with this new approach that's taking shape of mission-oriented innovation policy. And I guess it derived from his participation in the Maastricht Memorandum, which suggested this new take on mission-oriented innovation policy. And new because it should go beyond the defense characteristics of past missions. But again, he was bothered by whether this would mean only incremental innovation or would indeed promote radical change. So he expected R&D in this current ICT paradigm to unlock potential environmentally friendly technologies. He talked about how, for example, ICT could save transportation to work, as we are doing here with home office. And for such effort into R&D to happen, Freeman clarified that not only market mechanisms should happen or expected to happen. He said that clearly public efforts also influence the generation and the diffusion of radical innovation. The generation with RTOs, research and technology organizations, with universities, and the diffusion with public service, procurement, for example. And in chapter 10 of Economics of Hope, he directly mentions the role of public RTOs, which is great because that's exactly my focus for my PhD. I'm looking at the role of RTOs in mission-oriented innovation policy. So he directly refers to RTO as a possibility to lead these technological efforts. And they should do it not only in-house, but subcontract most, engage other RTOs, other agents, private labs, universities. And this should be done also involving more stakeholders globally, So RTOs and stakeholders in the South should also play a big role in it. We should build our technical competence for sustainable development here and also everywhere. So to tackle climate emergency, he would suggest that we need global commitment and also global competence. So thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Another really interesting kind of perspective. There's some new approaches. There's this thing called transformative innovation, which really looks at systems as well. And it's wonderful to be reminded that our early systems of innovation thinkers were also talking about transformative and rapid and radical technological change in the context of institutions changing as well. Those ideas are closer together than is sometimes acknowledged. And who would have known? Chris would never have been able to see how impending that catastrophe is, and just how radical the innovations are that we're now thinking about in order to address it. All right, so thank you very much to those four presenters. I'm now going to turn to our so-called senior presenters to get some of their experiences of interactions with Chris. And I'm going to call on Helena first. Helena, you knew Chris Freeman. Can you talk to us some about what you learned from your interaction with him?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to greet and congratulate both the organizers and the participants of this seminar. It is a great, great pleasure to see you all and so well. Asked to share my experience, as Susan did, in interacting with Chris Freeman, the main thing I have to mention is his humanity, generosity, kindness, and great interest in people and the knowledge they accumulate. He was himself a complete lesson of life, I think. He would always find time to discuss ideas and was also a great listener. And this was particularly important as he was my PhD supervisor. And this was indeed a great experience and privilege for me. And how this began? In Latin America, I have to tell you that most of us are raised with the tradition of the systemic approach in mind. Celso Furtado, perhaps the most important Brazilian economist, wrote papers in the 50s about the production system. So in the 80s, when we heard about the concept of national system of innovation developed by Chris Freeman, and of course we knew him by name for many years, I decided to focus my doctoral study on this issue. And after my viva, he insisted that I should try to publish the thesis. And then when Macmillan accepted to publish it, he offered to write the preface forwards. But anyway, it was a great experience. At that time, it was 1994. I went back to Brazil at the beginning of 93. And helped to set up a research group with Cassiolato and other colleagues that were working in different parts of Brazil with this concept of national system of innovation. And in 97, the group became a Mercosur research network named RSVP, and we developed the concept of local innovation and production system, LIPS, based on Chris' concept of national system of innovation, and also the Latin American contributions on development and technical change. And of course, we were particularly interested in the policy implication of that discussion, as Betty Ann and the others here have highlighted in their presentation. Policy implication was always an issue very important to Freeman. So the first step was to identify the main subsystem within this Brazilian system of innovation, in line with the description that José Miguel makes in his paper, giving emphasis to the role of universities, of course, as Helena and Shagufta do, and others, organization also in charge of creating and diffusion knowledge, not only universities, but all of them. And in addition, of course, to the three other subsystems, production, innovation, the political, and the social. We put culture within the social. But anyway, the second step was to project this subsystem to the subnational scales. We have also developed and refined a corresponding methodological and analytical framework with Chris' guidance to allow us to operate this concept and carry out field works. And we have analyzed more than 200 cases of LIPS from airplanes and health to family agriculture, cultural festival, and others. And yes, we will celebrate next year the 25th anniversary of Rede SISH. But let me remind you that Rede SISH is the short for Research Network Rede in Portuguese, on local production innovation systems and arrangement. So Bengt-Ake was, we thank him for the acronym LIPS. Perhaps he can explain that because he said you cannot work with this acronym that you are working with, this amount of words, and so he proposed LIPS, and in English we do that. In Portuguese we have a short one, APL, APL, local production arrangement, and system, and we discovered is a very difficult word. But anyway, even if in the late 90s, Chris had to avoid long trips, he never refused to write chapters for our books in Rede SISH. On the contrary, he insisted to follow our work. So we published in our first book, Rede SISH book in 1999, innovation. He published his article, Innovation System, City-State, National, Continental, and Subnational. And afterwards, we never forget that he handed us in 2000 his hard landing for the new economy, information technology in the US National System of Innovation. We published it in this book, System of Innovation and Development by Elgar in 2003. And we were amazed because he was predicting the forthcoming financial crisis. He said, neither the evidence about long-term productivity changes, nor the historical reflection, nor the scale of corporate and household debts, nor the calculation of possible future rates of return on ICT investment can conclusively show that will be hard learning. Nevertheless, taken together, this should give cause for serious reflection. So fasten your seatbelt. This was amazing. And months later, he asked us permission to publish the article in a journal. Betty Ann quotes it. It was published in Structural Change and Economic Dynamics. Other authors I have to mention in this book include Johnson and Lundvall, Marc Ambert, François Chenet, Catherine Sauviat, Pascal Petit, Rodrigo Arocena, Judith.
So many, Helena, but so little time.
Paul Saviotti, Luciano Coutinho, many others. But anyway, I have to finish, isn't it? I had some things for the debate, but unfortunately my time is up. So I will finally register that in the end of 2010, in a seminar organized in the Brazilian Development Bank. We dedicated to Professor Freeman for his invaluable contributions on the issue we were discussing, the new generation of production innovation policies, where we highlighted three of his main lessons. First, the emphasis on the need to think innovation and policies beyond economic growth, aiming primarily at promoting sustainable development with equity and social inclusion and justice. Secondly, the change of financialization. I would advise you to follow what he wrote about financialization because it's still very, very strong and good. The challenge of financialization and the perception that economies with more resilience to impacts of financial crisis were those that enjoyed minimal conditions for national autonomy. And thirdly, very nowadays opportune, his longer-standing arguments on the importance, especially in times of crisis, of the role of state in implement appropriate policies, both for social protection and for opening new paths for development. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you for those observations, and I'm sure that some more of them will come in as we get into questions and answers. So Bengt-Ake, you have the last word of this session, at least. Please share with us some of your interactions and experiences with Chris.
I have to just say a few words about the four papers. I think Chris would have been extremely happy to know that his ideas can be used, but I also think that he would appreciate when they go beyond his own ideas. I'm not sure he really wanted to establish a kind of school where people just repeated his ideas. I think he especially appreciated people who challenged his ideas in good ways. I had one specific, I think there were, the papers were very interesting because they brought forward some aspects of his work which are not the most well-known. The idea of voluntary underdevelopment is very radical and provoking. The same is the fact that he puts up some kind of warning that we do not get too focused on the kind of approach of Lundvall, which is about interactive learning between users and producers, that we should also keep thinking about the importance of science. And I think this was close to his art all the way through. And I have one comment to, I think it was José Miguel, who we got the impression that Chris was against econometrics. I don't think this is correct. He was not against, he was against the idea that you only could theorize about things which were measurable. He was strongly against that. It means you must become the prisoner of your own toolbox or tool house or something like that. So that's just a small point. Okay, let me move on to some personal experiences with Chris. I think Susan might have gotten the wrong impression that I would tell some scandals about Chris, but I think it's important to realize that none of us is a saint, and neither is he. nobody is, I mean, we all get the impression, for instance, that Chris was completely focused on the third world and underdevelopment. This is true. He was a world citizen, and he was extremely focused on understanding what's going on in the whole world. But in some respects, he could be rather English, you know. It comes to football, for instance. I watched football matches with him and some of people of his same age, and there were no neutrality there. It was very strong feelings. I also remember, I think Charlotta is around, a very interesting debate between Charlotta and Chris. Normally they agreed on most important things, but Charlotta came to say that you do not have any weather in England. We have weather in Latin America, but you don't have that in England. And Chris, he got so angry. I never seen him so upset. So it's just to say, let's remember that we all have our peculiarities, and we are not in a kind of perfection. I met Chris around 1980, and the reason was that a young PhD student, Finn Thomason, had been on visit at SPRU, and we asked him if he could invite Chris, and he succeeded to do that. And the reason was that we promised Chris that there are some very interesting areas for watching birds in Denmark. I don't think we had a very impressive academic record that could attract him, but the idea that he could go out there in some lakes and watch interesting birds, it took him to Aalborg. And when he got there, I think we found a lot of mutual sympathy. We were a group of basically left-wing innovation scholars, very critical to mainstream neoclassical economics. And so I think, and we were in a provincial university, and we were slightly marginalized by the mainstream economists. All these things Chris liked. I mean, this was the kind of people he wanted to work with. So, and he was 20 years older than me. I was 40 and he was 60, and normally he would say, this is a very big age difference. But you didn't feel it like that. I mean, he was a mentor, and we had great respect, but very soon we felt more like becoming very close friends and I would say comrades in arms against neoclassical theory and special types of academic snobbery and stuff like that. We strongly disliked those things, and so did Chris. We made him honorary professor in Aalborg, and he had to put on some gown or something like that, but he had jogging shoes, and the problem was that he had some problems with his hips, and so for him it was most practical. My last minute, I would say, if you met Chris in a pub and you started discussing politics or football, your guess would be that he would be a metal worker from Sheffield, because that was his style, both in clothing, his language, and everything. And it was not the pretension. That was the way Chris was, at the same time as he was one of the brightest and most greatest human people I ever met. So I just wanted to let me say, I heard what Luc and Carlota said, and of course they said the most important things, and I strongly support that. I mean, his total solidarity and interest for young people, for marginalized regions, etc., is absolutely the most important thing. But I wanted to add a few small details about Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. That's delightful. And we've got in the chat that apparently lots of people, following the Aalborg example, used bird watching as a way to get Chris to come and visit. What a wonderful story. So we do have about 15 minutes left now for questions at least, and maybe some answers if everybody's very disciplined. So there is one question already in the chat, but if others want to ask questions, can you please raise your hand in Zoom? That's in your reactions, under your reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and there's a raise hand function. So Rajesh, could you briefly raise your question? I'm just going to be really tough about these must be brief and they must be questions. So would you start us off?
So I think we had four great presentations and wonderful sharing of experiences by the senior scholars. I have put it is not a question, it is a sort of a comment which I have put in the chat box, but I will only read out the last line. My question to him, Moreira, was the concluding line in the 1996 paper a compliment to linear models, or was it a subtle dig? That's all.
Do you want to reply on that briefly, Arthur?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I also wrote it in the chat. I just believe that there was not much of a paradox between these two supports from Chris. He would say that there are good parts in both the linear and in the systemic. He would say that the R&D part of the linear approach is still paramount. We need it if you want to decouple in absolute terms energy and material use.
Thank you. Elias from El Salvador, would you like to share with us your comment and maybe add a question to it? Maybe not. Are there any oh, wait a minute, here we've got a couple of hands up now. Jana, what is your question?
My question goes to Bengt-Ake. You were mentioning that Chris would have loved for his ideas to be developed further. And since this is a seminar for and by junior researchers, which are directions where you can see that they can be developed further?
Now you have to answer that briefly, Bengt-Ake. I know that's going to be a little hard.
No, but I mean, for instance, the issue about the role of science and radical innovation versus interactive learning and incremental innovation. I see sometimes some kind of misunderstanding that in order to tackle very big problems, you need radical innovation, and incremental innovation doesn't matter. But of course, any period of radical innovation raises an issue about speeding up incremental learning in all fields. I think that's an area where working out more concretely what is at stake with so-called transformational innovation policy is a challenge for young scholars, a very important one.
Are there any ideas from other people on the panel, junior or senior, on that really interesting question?
Susan, Judith raised her hand.
Yes, I was just waiting to see whether any of the rest of you wanted to say anything on that. And Judith, go right ahead.
Okay, I have also a compliment to everyone. It was a pleasure listening to all of you. And my question goes to Bengt-Ake also, because you wrote a book with Chris in 1988, a book that I love deeply, Small Countries Facing the Technological Revolution. I have a copy dedicated by Freeman that said, remember Iceland, and Carlota put, and don't forget Venezuela. But my question is, what can you tell us about this experience of writing this wonderful book with Chris in 1988?
I do remember trying to transform a handwritten document by Chris Freeman into my computer, or I don't know what I used of text processing. It was 1988, and that was a fantastic experience. I mean, Chris had written like 25 pages in his handwriting, and there was not one, and it was a perfect logic all the way through, and there was not one single change. I mean, when we work on our computers, we change and we change, but he had such a fantastic mind. I mean, and the other thing is, of course, that he was attracted by the idea of looking into small countries, because he always had this, always taking the side of the small guys, at whatever level. So that was definitely a part of that.
Wonderful story. Somehow we have to make sure that all those copies of things that are signed and dedicated get gathered up somewhere over time. So Carlos also has a question for Bengt-Ake, but I want to really invite any of the panelists to chime in on these questions if you want. Carlos, do you want to put your question yourself, or shall I read it? One of your Aalborg alumni, he says that Freeman wouldn't like to have a school of people only repeating his, but when his ideas are so relevant in today's innovation and development discussion, how can we avoid repeating them?
Okay, I'm not sure I got you speaking too quickly for me. Huh? So here one of you say that Freeman wouldn't like to have a school of only repeating his, but when his are so in today's innovation, how can we avoid? Okay, I would say we are not allowed to repeat ideas. I had a very fantastic experience teaching at the most prestigious Chinese university, Tsinghua, for 4 times half a year. And I installed problem-based learning and project work. And the first thing I told the students was that if you just repeat what Professor Lundvall or the Communist Party says, you will get very bad grades. You need to think by yourself. And this was quite shocking at that time. Today, I probably would have been delivered somewhere else. This was 15 years ago. But it's obvious that intellectual work is to take on good ideas and try to develop them, and also to criticism is fundamental in intellectual work. You need, I mean, it's not sufficient to repeat what others have said, and I see a slight risk with this kind of centenary that we raise some kind of theoretical. Luckily, if you read carefully, there are sufficient contradictions within the work of Chris and within the work of Dick Nelson, within the work of all people, if you look closely. So even if you try just to repeat what they say, you will also repeat some contradictions.
But thank you for that invitation to really be creative and think in new ways as well. Sean Cunningham notes that sometimes he feels stuck because the framework he's working with is so rich. I would like to take the prerogative of the chair and ask Helena what those points were that she ran out of time to make. Helena, do you want to make any of those? And then we'll go to Jana.
Let me unmute. Yeah, thank you, Susan. First of all, in the line of personal notes, I think we could not avoid talking about Chris' 80th birthday. And we were all there, Gabi, Alex, Judith, Rodrigo, Bengt-Ake, Carlotte, many others that are here with us today. But it was a wonderful, wonderful meeting, and social and also academic. And I recall how much afraid I was to get into the plane because, you know, Chris Freeman's birthday was 11 September. And that day, that year was 2001. And we were seeing on TV the disaster of the Twin Towers in the US, hit by an airplane. And the last thing I wanted was to fly that day. And we had to do that. And even worse, I recall that Freeman loved candies, biscuit, cookies, cakes. And so I had a huge basket with these things that he loved as a birthday present, and all of them very suspicious. And I was only considering how could I enter England with that basket full of very suspicious things made of cassava, tropical fruits, and other things that only existed in our continent. Of course, the immigration office all over the world went radical those days and looking for suspicion products. But anyway, we succeeded to give him the basket. But the meeting was very good. And I wonder if some of you would like to raise any point. And we were very impressed because Chris Freeman was very, very afraid of a next World War. But anyway, Susan, do I still have 2 minutes to raise an academic point?
May I break in?
Okay.
Helena,
Okay.
no, I remember this birthday, and it was a fantastic event. And I had a much smaller gift than you. I had an envelope with a small paper in it, which said, I give this to you, a global network called Globelics. It's your birthday present. And it had been prepared not only by myself, but by you, Casiolato, and others. And I knew for Chris, building global network with focus on innovation and development would be the most important thing he would like to have. So this is, it was a great event.
That's so So lovely. And yes, I've got permission from the wizard behind the curtain that we can run over a bit. So Elena, go ahead. And then we have a question in the chat, and Jana has a question as well. But Elena, please go ahead.
Thank you, Susan. Okay. No, the point I wanted to raise was about when discussing innovation, my feeling is that most people point out to the importance of the systemic approach. And it's indeed very important. But the first word in the very concept of national system of innovation, it's national and refers to the context. And the context, I think it's really matters. Time is very important. Space is also. History and geography are there. And all papers presented today recognize it. And mainly it's Arthur the highlight the historical perspective of the study of innovation. Of course, it's crucial. History and geography matters. Therefore, the main focus is on the context and its historical evolution, of course, and the conclusions that specific historical, geopolitical, and territorial conditions are essential to explain which and how production innovation capabilities should be acquired, used, and developed, and that narrow, abstract, decontextualized perspective limit our understanding and the use of any theory, concept, indicator, policy, putting their usefulness seriously in risk. And what I would like to mention as well is that from our experience, it is in the context of any territory that one can observe and analyze the systemic dimension of production and innovation. That is to say, to be capable to use the national system of innovation concept. And by the way, I recall that in the 90s, globalization and neoliberal thinking were perhaps the strongest mark of the 90s. No? So talk about national and local scale at that time was not easy at all. It was a real temerity. That's why Bengt-Ake said that he was a colleague in arms with Chris Freeman, trying to defend, to fight these neoliberal ideas. Thank you very much. Oh,
I'm so glad we had a chance for that. I understand that Mamo Mucci had a question as well. Mamo, are you out there? And do you want to unmute and go ahead and ask that? And then I'll go to Shagufta.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you. That's very, very great ideas that you all, and it's wonderful that Chris Freeman had all this inspiration that we all still make him live with us. I think that's wonderful. He's gone, but he's with us, which is nice. And in Africa, we have a philosophy called Ubuntu. Bengt-Ake is me and I'm him. Chris is us and we're him. So it's so wonderful. So I like that we are discussing, and hopefully not to discuss to just only to do appreciation, but actually learn new things and inspirational things so that we can try to address the biggest challenges that we have now faced. When Chris was there, we had war and many other things, but now we have the survival of the world is at risk. So because of that, my question I want to ask is, how is there any chance now we can rethink innovation system to address all the different challenges, the health challenge, the education challenge, the economic challenge, the political challenge, the nature, the climate challenge, the demographic challenge? How do we kind of comprehensively in a unified way have a very extraordinary model, design, thinking, learning that we need to do so that we can actually create new policy learning for everyone? We sanitize the world. We sanitize leadership, governance, institutions, systems. How do we do that so that we can try to save the world. If it's possible to save it, I don't know. But at the moment, really, it's a big risk. And I come also from a country called Ethiopia. I'm at the moment in a very difficult situation. There's war going on in Ethiopia. My family is there. I'm sincerely telling you, there are days I don't sleep. I'm so scared. I wish I was just there in the war myself, so that I'm part of it. So then it's easy. But being here in South Africa and hearing everything like that, I don't know what to do. How do we solve all these problems together? You see, that's, and then please, I want to ask you, in America, why is America supporting terrorists also in Ethiopia? Please help us also, you Americans also, to tell the government of America to behave.
Question to the White House and be sure to send you the response. But first, you put an enormous question to us, and I'd really like to hear from all four of our junior panelists. What would you change about the innovation systems approach to make it even more effective in addressing our enormous challenges that we're addressing? And I'm going to go to each of the four in turn, and please give us, just a few sentences, but we really want to hear from you because you are the ones that are going to be doing this. So Betty Ann, do you have, what would you change about the approach?
I'm looking at involving the private sector at the policy making stage, because usually the government makes the policy and then calls in the private sector to more or less inform them about it. They don't seem to be included in the policy making at all. And so usually there's a little bit of a pushback when it comes to how they want to implement it. And so, yeah, I would think that industry leaders should be in the room when the policy is being discussed, at least, or decided upon.
That's intriguing. Jose Miguel, do you have one change to propose to us?
Yes, I would say so. First of all, I would like to say that I feel a great envy because you guys did have the chance to have this discussion with Freeman and we don't. So that's part of life, right? And second, in terms of the changes that we could implement, I would say that I have the feeling that the solutions from the science, technology, and innovation side do have the systemic view. However, the problems that we are dealing with, I still feel that they lack to be considered as systemic as well, as this relationship with the different problems that actually constitute these obstacles to development. So I would put more focus on analyzing the problems as a system and trying to see how the connections of both systems, the science, technology, and innovation, and the system of problems, let's say, could actually help us to have a better understanding of how to achieve greater levels of development.
Shagufta, do you have one thing that you would name that you would change in the approach?
Yeah, and I think Betty Ann and Jose made very relevant remarks, and I would totally vouch for that there is a need for policy and also to see the problems in that way as we see the solutions on the other side. But yeah, for me, I think while I'm looking at the knowledge production system and the universities for a specific role, I think for the developing countries, as we see that not only is the policy lacking the voices of the elements of knowledge production systems like universities, but also there is a need to see the role of knowledge and knowledge production more than the technology transfer. And it's not really something new. I mean, everybody has talked about it, but it just doesn't seem to happen. And it looks like there is more needed to be done in that direction, that the demand from the society, from the knowledge production system or universities specifically, only seems to be that we need just you to hand in the degrees and so that people can move on and go find work. But universities could have much more impactful role for the societies, for connecting different parts of the innovation system together because of the kind of work that they do. So I think there is much more needed in that sense.
Thank you for that. Arthur, what one thing would you change?
It's not much about change, I guess, but I would like to see more and more efforts into combining system of innovation and dependence theory, especially for our context here in South America, because if parts of the system do not work in favor of innovation, what can we do? Do we have to strengthen some other parts? I'm talking about the problem here with the elites, the capitalist elites in this region.
Okay, thank you. So with the indulgence of the two additional people who had questions, I think those statements are so powerful that we should end on the note of those observations that have been made. We do have another session in 2 weeks, and the discussion will certainly continue because people are bringing in really big questions that aren't just Q&A at the end of a presentation, and that's wonderful. It's I loved Bengt-Ake's observation that Freeman found in Aalborg the kind of people he wanted to work with, and I think we are all finding in these conversations the kind of people that we want to work with, taking on the scale of problems with the creativity that has flowed from generation to generation in this community. And I certainly hope that you're all inspired to go out and just make sure you have this copy of Innovation and Development when the essays from these wonderful scholars appear. So with that, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And you will get lots of emails that give you the links and the presenters. Thank you to everyone, to the 6 presenters today, and to the audience for this wonderful interaction. See you in 2 weeks.